Hello, everybody.
Yeah, well.
My name is Phil Martin, and I finally made it. That's what I do. So, yeah. I've lived in Madison for about 25, 30 years now. I taught at Edgewood College in the theater department there. I lived in Cross Plains, but I had two grandchildren that go to that school right there. So I lived in a very small community. Today we're going to be talking about Ellis Island and the stories of people that came through there. I lived in New York City in the early 1980s, and I was lucky enough to get permission to go out to Ellis Island and have a tour of it before it was cleaned up and renovated with Leah Iacocca and all that stuff. And now you can visit it, it's all cleaned up. But I was able to go out there and see sort of how they left it. Literally, they just left. It looked like everybody took a lunch break at the same time, and nobody came back after lunch. I mean, there were coats hanging on the racks, the paper and the typewriters, their sandwich bags. It's amazing. They just said, okay, we're going to close Ellis Island, and off they went. So, but I was able to get some of the stories of people that went through. Ellis Island is our major port of immigration back then. There certainly were lots of others, and on the west coast as well, Angel Island. But we're going to, Ellis Island is the most famous of all the immigration stations back then. So all the stories that you'll hear today are actual events that happened to real people. In my research, there's a museum in the Statue of Liberty in the basement there, an oral history museum where they recorded the interview, a lot of immigrants that came through and then wrote it down. And so I covered a lot of these stories up here. In 1984, 85, excuse me, 1990, I get it right. 1995, I wrote a full-scale musical called Gateway about all of these stories. But I wanted to have this continue on for more people to hear it, so I decided to turn it into a one-person show, which is what you will hear today, and I go around and perform this for different groups. In the last about 45 minutes or so, and then we open up for questions, comments, and I got nothing else to do afterwards except make it home before the snow. So I am willing to stay as long as people have questions or comments they would like to make. We came because we were hungry. We came because we were poor. Some came chasing a dream, while others were chased from the doors. We came because of the stories. We came to merely survive. Some came in hopes that tomorrow would find them alive. Some carried all that they owned in their hands, others carried nothing at all. Some barely could breathe, some barely could walk, some barely could manage to crawl. Still we dreamed of making a living, using our hands to plow our trade. We dreamed of sleeping at night, closing our eyes and not being afraid. We came. Some carried all that they owned in their hands, others carried nothing at all. Some barely could breathe, some barely could walk, some barely could manage to crawl. Still we dreamed of making a living, using our hands to plow our trade. We dreamed of sleeping at night, closing our eyes and not being afraid. With dreams in our hearts, hopes in our hands, here we stand. We came. few weeks ago, I was looking through some boxes I'd packed away in the far corner of my attic. And I came across an amazing old book. Well, amazing at least to me because I wrote it. I don't mean a great literary book. You've never read it. It was never even published. It's just notes and memories about places that I've been, people I've met a long time ago. People like Rosa Milazzo and Vito Maria from Italy, Hans Jurgensen, a young German boy, Jacob and Rebecca Janowski, Russian Jews, people who, like me, had come to this country in search of something. For some, it was a dream of freedom or peace, and for some, it was merely an instinct of survival. We were just a few of the millions of immigrants that passed through Ellis Island on the way to a better life, and hopefully, a future. My name is Wilhelm Brenner, and I came to this country in 1907 because I had a dream. Now, my mother told me that I was born with dreams, that I had a different dream for every day of my life. My father warned me about it, about how they could break even the strongest of men. He would say, you can change your job, you can change the town where you live, but you can never change your position in life. That is decreed by God. You are now and you will always be the son of a farmer. I was young and I wanted to prove him wrong. So one morning I woke up, I hopped on the back of an open cart and I headed down the winding road to the big city of Thun at the bottom of the hill. And there I found myself a job. As an apprentice in a print shop. And I stayed, and I worked, and I worked. Until I realized my father was right. You cannot change your position in life. So I put away my dreams, and I stayed, and I worked. I stayed for 18 years. Now, 18 years later, I have a wife, Martha, 2 children, Anna and Henrik. Just recently, I was promoted for the 3rd time to the lofty position of senior apprentice. Oh, good morning, Mr. Kellerman. How are you? Yes, sir. I've got the paper right here. Would you like to take a look? No, sir. I'll just put it on your desk. Yes, sir. Oh, this week I was able to put in that letter from Mrs. Becker's brother in San Francisco. Talks all about the earthquake. Yes, sir, I realize it happened over a year ago, but it's not my fault. He only writes once a year. Well, also, I was able to put in that part about his wife being chased down the street by their new automobile. I thought that was kind of funny. News is not supposed to be funny. Very true, very true. So, look, it wasn't that funny at all. It scared their best milking cow so bad, she didn't give a squirt for over a month. Yes, sir, I'll get back to it. Yes, sir. You wanted me to remind you today about your meeting at the Haberdashers. Very good, sir. I'll see you tomorrow. Good day. Now, putting the letters in the paper was my idea. I mean, it's all any of us ever thought about anyway. So many of our family and friends had gone to America and we wanted to know absolutely everything that happened to them there. So when the letter came, we would pass it around from family to family, friend to friend. Sometimes they would get torn or lost. So I came up with the idea of putting them in the paper. Mr. Kellerman hated the idea until he realized it sold more papers. So this is the letter that is going in next week's paper. Dear brother Ernst, Gertrude, Elsie, Johann, and Elias. The long, hard winter is finally slowly beginning to melt into spring. The first order of business is to finish the barn. Rachel has put her foot down. The pigs are not allowed inside the house anymore, no matter how cold it gets. With the money we saved last year, nearly $200 American, we should be able to build a barn large enough for the pigs, the hens, the roosters, and the 11 milking cows. The hardships still are many. Learning to think like an American is very difficult. Freedom like the kind they have here is very hard to comprehend, and even harder to explain. I can only say it is like the air. It is like mother's milk. It is just a part of life. And I will tell you again that I have never regretted for one moment our move to America. I still hope that someday you too will be able to join us. The land is bountiful and the opportunities seem endless. For example, I've been making cheese for my family and some of my friends, and now I have businessmen and bankers coming to me wanting me to open a store and sell my cheese, as if I don't have enough to do with the farm. And the way they look at you here, they do not ask who your father was, or care who your father was. Here, they only care, who are you? I must go now, Rachel is yelling. One of the pigs is in the house again. Much love, dear brother Andrew Kaufman, Joliet, Illinois. Now, the word America was heard all over Europe, all over the world. Wherever there was a village, a town, a home, a pub, we talked about it. From my workbench, I would look out and I would see the lines of people as they trudged through town. People who had carried everything that they owned on their backs and bags or in well-worn suitcases. People who had climbed over the mountains and down the roads, hoping, dreaming, escaping. And I wondered if I would ever have that kind of strength, if I would ever find that kind of courage. Well, one day an event took place that changed my life forever. I heard trumpets. Now, I don't mean heavenly trumpets, I mean real trumpets. You see, every couple of months, the shipping companies would send their agents through the town, drumming up new business for a ship sailing to America. They'd ride into town on these big, beautifully plumed horses, and they'd go up and down the streets, blowing those trumpets as loud as they could to make sure everybody knew that they were there. And they'd go down into the town square, and they'd set up, and there'd be music and free food and drink. And we'd all go down and listen to the marvelous tales of America, and wonder if half of what they were saying could possibly be true. Now, by the time I made it down to the square, there's already a large crowd gathered. I looked through the crowd and I could see a young man, very smartly dressed. He stood up on the back of an open cart, hung a poster on a peg nearby, and he looked out at the crowd. And he shouted, "America! America! Now I know that you've heard before the stories that tales the streets paved in gold. Well, I'm here to tell you it's true. And why should you believe me? How do I know? Because I've been there. I've seen it for myself. I've seen rich flatland for as far as the eye can see. Where all you had to do is take the seeds, toss them in the ground, and the crops would grow by themselves. I have seen rivers and lakes overflowing with fish. I've walked down city streets in the middle of the night, and it was so safe that no one even bothered to lock their doors. I can see in your eyes what you're saying. You're saying this may be true for others, but not for me. I'm a farmer. I'm a baker. I'm a liveryman. Well, let me tell you that it wasn't 5 years ago that I left this country with a shirt on my back and a ticket in my hand from places I'd never even heard of. Lincolnborough. I didn't know where it was, this Lincolnborough. And look at me now. New hats and coats, invested in a different pair of shoes for every day of the week. And why? Because I realized that there was no future for me here. I realized that the only future for me was in America. And today, for 65 francs, I can give you a future. Today, for 65 francs, I can give you tomorrow. Today, for 65 francs, I can give you America. His words hit me like thunder. They pierced me like lightning. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I had to do. I went back to my bench. I tore out the story that I was working on, and I wrote one last story. I made one copy of it and laid it on Mr. Kellerman's desk. And I did. Now, when I went home and I told my wife, Martha, what I had done, she was not as excited about it as I was. But we talked about it. Yes, I know. It was a surprise to me, too. I had no idea I was going to do this. But just think, can you imagine Mr. Kellerman going into work tomorrow, going to his desk, opening the paper, and seeing that note we left for him? I left for him, yes. I left for him, yes. But every day I go into work know that nothing will ever change. And I found out that he has a nephew that knows nothing, cares nothing about this business. And yet he is going to be given everything, and me, nothing. Now, I've been having my dreams again, Martha. No, it is not a bad bratwurst, it's my dreams. And you married me for my dreams. So would it be so bad to this dream of America where the streets were paved in gold? Yes, I know not the. We could go, we could build a house, we could have a horse and a cow, maybe 2 cows. And we could live near your brother, near your cousin, Carl, Sheboygan. Yes, I know you're scared. Yes, we'd have to travel on one of those great big ships across the ocean. Don't worry, I can't swim either. So we talked about it. And the next day when Mr. Kellerman came in and he got in my face and he said, "Get back to work," I tried to stand my ground. And he said, "I'll even promote you for real this time." And I was about to waver when my wife Martha stood between us and said, "No, we are going to America." So over those next few days, we sold what few belongings we had, gave away the rest, said goodbye to all of our friends. And then one morning, we woke up, went down to the train station. We hopped on a train down to Basel, then onto a small boat down the Rhine River. We crossed the English Channel and finally, slowly, eventually made it to Liverpool, England. We arrived in Liverpool just in time to get our tickets in the steerage cabins, which is where we were going to stay, and then go down onto the docks and wait with the thousands of other immigrants just like us waiting to board the ship. I mean, right there on the dock, there were people from all over Europe. There were farmers from Sicily standing right next to fishermen from Norway. There was a whole town of Russian Jews on their way to a place called New Jersey. And there were 2 Hungarian soldiers in full military dress standing right next to my wife and my children. And we were all talking our own native languages, but with one word being heard over and over again: America. America. Well, one of the crew came by and said it would be some time before we could get on board the ship, that we should find a corner to sit and wait. So we did. As we were waiting, I looked over and I could see there was a commotion at the far end of the dock. So I went over to get a better look and climbed up on some crates so I could really see. And you won't believe what I saw. There was a ramp going into the side of the ship, into the steerage cabins where we were going to stay. And up that ramp, they were taking a horse. A horse. Now, it was a very famous racehorse, but it was a horse nonetheless. You see, its owner was an American, and he wanted to take his prized possession home with him in style. So instead of letting that horse go in the belly of the ship with all the other cargo, he bought it a ticket. And that horse crossed the ocean in a cabin with 17 Italians. And from what the Italian said, it was a very nice horse indeed. When I came back, I sat down next to a young lady by the name of Rosa Milazzo. She was on her way to a place called Des Moines, Iowa, to marry a gentleman by the name of Monona. Now, this was not one of those young love stories where Cucuzza had gone over before, saved his money, was now sending for his young lady. No, Monona Cucuzza was a friend of her father's. The last time she had seen him was some 8 years ago, when she was only 10, and he was nearly 40 then. But you see, Monona Cucuzza had gone over and done quite well for himself. Just recently, his wife had died. So he longed for the companionship of someone from the old country. So he thought of his friend and the little girl who by now would be a woman. So he sent her a letter. And in that letter, he sent a picture of himself, enough money for a ticket and other expenses, and a proposal of marriage. Now, Rosa had dreamed for such a long time about going to America. It was all that she ever thought about. In her own little corner of the house, she had the posters that the companies had put out. Underneath her bed was a small box where she had tried to save every lira possible. It wasn't nearly enough for a ticket. So when the letter came, she decided to accept. First, because life in Sicily was very hard, and it meant one less mouth to feed at the table for her mother and father and 8 brothers and sisters. But also, a few nights before, she had been out walking in the night air, and as she was walking, she looked up at the sky, she saw a star fall. And she made a wish on that star, and that wish was to go to America. She didn't ask when or how or with whom, she only wanted to go. And she believed that this was her answer. So here she stood on the docks of Liverpool, halfway between her past and her future. Just then the ship's whistle blew and it was time to get on board the ship, so we grabbed our belongings. We ran around the decks to get those last-minute essentials, prayer books, stars of David's, chocolates, lemon drops, something for the body and something for the soul. And then we went up the ramp, and we turned and we stood at the rail. And we all stood silent. And we watched. We watched as the anchor was lifted. We watched as they tossed the ropes away. We watched as the ship slowly drifted away from the dock. Nobody moved, nobody talked, we just looked. Because for many of us, it would be the last time that we ever saw that woman again. And no matter how hard a life or how unjust a government we had lived under, this had been our home. So we stood there and we watched until there was nothing left to see but the sea. And then we turned and we watched the ship as it followed the setting sun to the other side of the world. Now, when you're on board a ship, there isn't a whole lot to do. You walk the decks, you look at the waves, you count flying fish in the porpoise, you count your money. You had to have 25 American dollars to show to the guards on Ellis Island when you got there. And you protected that money with your life. The ladies would sew it into their undergarments and underskirts where no gentleman would dare get near it. The gentleman. There was a gentleman in my cabin that every night when he went to sleep, he would hold his money in one hand and a dagger in the other. I personally never took off my shoes the whole time I was on board the ship. But mainly you get to sit and wait, which leaves a lot of time for cards. Now, music may be an international language, but I've never met a man yet who didn't know what to do with 52 cards when he had a chance. And when you're on board a ship for almost 3 weeks, you have a lot of chances. So all day long, we'd sit around and play some kind of card game. Nobody knew the rules, but it really didn't matter. And nobody lost any real money. We don't think. I mean, you look down on the pot, and there'd be drachma, lira, pounds, francs, kroners, even hairpins and candy wrappers. We didn't know it wasn't money. It was at one of these all-day card games that I met the most interesting fellow. Hello, my name, Vito Marini. I come from Carini, Sicily, Italy. My wife and my daughters, Annabella and Catarina, we go to California, America. There I have 7 sons. A long time ago, my eldest son, Roberto, he go to California, America. He worked very hard, sent from number 2 son, Enrico. Enrico, he go to California, America. They work very hard. They sent for number 3 son, Christopher. Now, all of my sons in California, America, and finally my wife and my daughters and I, we go. It taken 9 years, but we be a family once again. Oh, I'm very, very proud. And 2 of my sons, Enrico, Christopher, they married American girls. They have 2 American grandbabies I have never seen. Oh, I'm very proud. And the land. They have bought some land there. And they say it is just like in the old country. And I say no. It is better because it is theirs. And they can give it to their sons and their sons and theirs. Oh, I'm very proud. 3 kings. I win the pot. There's a gentleman who sat off to the side most of the time. Matter of fact, the whole time that I knew him, he only said one word. Pittsburgh. That's all he said. Pittsburgh. Over and over again. Pittsburgh. Well, I thought it was some kind of greeting. So one day I decided I'd go over to him. He stood up. And he said, Pittsburgh. And I said, Pittsburgh! And he got so excited, he hugged me and hugged me and hugged me. It wasn't until later that I realized it wasn't a greeting at all. It was the only word in English that he knew. It was where he was going. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was quite disappointed when he learned that I was going to Sheboygan, Wisconsin. In the evening, in the quiet nights, we would listen to the music from the first class cabins as it drifted down to us. First class, now that was something that we could only dream about, something too far away from our own realities. I mean, up there, they had smoking rooms, libraries, cafeterias with real wooden tables. While down below, we had wooden crates and barrels. Up there, they ate on glazed duck French pastries. While down below, we had cold herring twice a day. Up there, they slept in rooms that had velvet curtains, satin sheets, down pillows. While down below, we slept in steel bunks with straw mattresses and lice. Every once in a while, they would come out to the railings and look down at us down below. They would smile and laugh and point. They would throw down nuts and coins just to see the kids chase around after them. They would get bored with that and then eventually go back into their safe, soft worlds. One day we were playing cards, and I looked around at these people, and I realized that here, with this group, were my first friends. You might have been a pauper while me, the richest man, but once we get ashore, we will all begin again. All the starting out together, helping each other to our ends, and why? Because we're friends. My first friends in America, friends for life will stay. You go your way and I'll go mine, but in my heart you'll stay forever for you. My first friends in America, let's toast the life that's free. My future's bright in America, 'cause I have friends like you to look after me. Who knows where you come from? Who cares anyhow? We will be friends forever, starting right now. We're friends beginning now. My first friends in America. Let's toast the life that's free. My future's bright in America, 'cause I have friends like you to look after me. Hey, hey, you go to California and me, who knows where. But from now until we die, this one moment we will share. Life may come between us, but these memories will not end, because my friend, you are my friend. Who knows where you come from? Who cares anyhow? We will be friends forever, starting right now. We're friends beginning now. My first friends in America. Let's toast the life that's free. My future's bright in America, 'cause I have friends like you to look after me. My future's bright in America, 'cause I have friends like you to look after me. For you are my first friends. I was sitting on the deck one afternoon counting my money when Vito came up and sat down next to me. It's my friend. This morning we wake up and my daughter Katarina, she has a pus flowing from her eyes. We get some water and some rags and try to wipe it away, but still the pus flows. We grab her hand so she cannot rub, but still the pus flows. I tell her that we must take her to the doctors on the ship, but she says no. She has heard stories, rumors that they throw the sick children into the ocean. I say they will not do this, but she will not listen to me. She says if she had some leeches or good cow slaughter, that everything would be fine. I say we're in a boat in the middle of the ocean. Where are we going to find good cow slaughter? But she will not listen. Like Katarina, she cries. Now, you may not want me to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. That night, Vito went down to the cabin with the 17 Italians and the horse. Okay? Now, it wasn't cow slobber, but it's the best thing they had on board the ship. So he went down there, he collected that horse slobber, took it back to his wife. She made a potion and put it on Katarina's eyes. And the most amazing thing is, her eyes got better. One morning, we were still in our rooms, and I could hear out in the hall and up on the deck, people were just running around wildly, being crazy. So I went up on the deck, and people were just running everywhere. Captain, Captain, can you tell me why is everybody running? Is the ship sinking? No, good, okay. Land? America land? We can see it? Over here? I don't see it, I am looking. There. It's just a speck on the horizon, just a dot. It was real. So all day long we stood and watched as that speck of land just covered the whole horizon. Finally we could see trees and houses and look. American people. Hello, American people, hello! Then from the other side of the ship, they called, they said, hurry, come look. She's so big. She's so beautiful. She's like Moses in the Ten Commandments. I mean, people have told us, until you see her for the first time with your own eyes, there's nothing that can compare with that moment. to see the Statue of Liberty. So all day long we stood and we prayed. Night came and they said we won't be able to get on board the ship. We're going to leave the ship until tomorrow. So we stood and we watched the Statue of Liberty. From far across the ocean we came, so many different people still the same. Now here we stand with dreams unspoken, here we stand with fears unbroken, hoping that our day is here, hoping in our hearts you'll hear our prayer. Pretty lady in the harbor, standing tall as you can be, you hold high the light of freedom. Won't you shine your light on me? We have heard your tales of wonder. Here we stand at your promised shore. Pretty lady, spread your arms, take me home. Pretty lady, we have come from many places far away. We have traveled half the road to be standing here today. You give hope to a world without hope, riches to a world so full. Pretty lady, spread your arms, take me home. Pretty lady, spread your arms and take one more. Now, right next to the Statue of Liberty was a small island where our dreams would be answered, our prayers crushed. Right next to the Statue of Liberty was a small island where we would be let in to find the future and be sent back to live in the pain of our past. Right next to the Statue of Liberty was Ellis Island. Now, Ellis Island was a city unto itself. I mean, it's had its own train station, its own bank, its own cafeteria, its own hospital. It had one of the best hospitals in all of America. The doctors there saw more diseases off of one shipload of immigrants than most doctors saw in the whole career. So when morning came, we hopped on the ferry and went over to the island. When we got there was a guard standing there waiting for us. And he told us to line up according to the manifest numbers that we had pinned to our coats. And he said, follow. And we did. We followed like sheep. He could have been taking us to slaughter for all we knew, but we followed. He went inside, we followed. He turned left, we turned left. He went up the stairs, we followed up the stairs. And then he pushed the doors into the largest room that I'd ever seen in my life. And he said, get in there, the end of the line behind all the others. It is there that we were going to be asked our questions. And there were two doctors. The first doctor was the one to see if we had lice or rashes or limps. There was the second doctor that we were really concerned about. He was called the eye doctor. He was looking for a disease called trachoma. And if you had it, you were immediately sent back. Right there on the spot, families were separated forever. Right there on the spot, families had to decide who would go in with the healthy and who would go back with the sick. Right there on that spot, people said goodbye. My family and I made it up. My wife and my children made it through. The doctor looked at me and he found a rash on the side of my neck. So he took his chalk and he marked an R on my coat and told us to sit and wait, that we would be checked one last time. So I did. Now, while we were waiting, a friend of mine from the ship had a Stophanes Apophysically. who now, thanks to the guard, had a very American name of Pappas, came in, and he was so excited because he had his very first American food. And he brought me some. He said, here. So I was just about to have my very first American food. I'd never seen this before. And he sat there and smiled and said, eat. And he just stood there and laughed and laughed. He finally took it. And he opened it. And he said, now eat. It's much better that way. Well, I had my very first American food, a banana. We sat next to a young couple, Jacob and Rebecca Janowski. Rebecca was going to have a baby. She had told the doctors that it was still 3 or 4 months away, but being a father myself, I knew it was much sooner than that. And I was proved right when, while we were sitting there, she started to have that baby. So my wife took Rebecca to the hospital, and I was left behind with a very nervous new father-to-be. Jacob, it doesn't do any good to walk back and forth. I've tried it, it doesn't help. Jacob, stop. Stop. Can I ask you a question? Can you tell me why, with your wife in such a condition, would you dare risk a journey like this at this time? And he said, sometimes you have no choice. You see, we were visiting my father at his house outside of Odessa, when a friend of ours came riding up on his horse. And he said, the soldiers are coming. There's going to be a pogrom. We looked and we could see the dust of the horses as they rode this way. There was not time to run. I had to come up with another idea. So I told my wife to go into the house and grab all the sharp objects, the knives, the forks, the scissors, and to take them into the backyard and bury them in the ground. And my father and I, we went and got our dining room table, and we took it out into the front yard. Then we went back into the house, and we grabbed all of our best wines and meats and cheeses, and we put it on the table in the yard. By now we could hear the horses as they're about to round the corner into the yard. So we ran into the house. We ran down into the basement and hid in the basement behind the stacks of potatoes and waited. The soldiers were up there in the yard. They'd gotten off their horses. Finally, one of them said, let's eat and drink. We can always kill the Jews later. So all night long, we hid in the basement behind those potatoes. And we listened as the soldiers drank our wines and sang their songs cursing the Jews. And just before dawn, it became quiet. So I wanted to take a look. The soldiers were drunk, asleep on the ground. So I got my wife and my father and walked over the soldiers as they lay there. And when we made it to the road, we started to run across the field to the forest on the far side. Just then, one of the soldiers woke up. He saw us, and he grabbed his rifle, and he fired blindly, and my father fell to the ground. I tried to pick him up, but he said no. I tried again, but he took my hand away, and he says no. He knew. He said, go to America, like we had hoped. Oh, now. By now, the other soldiers were up. They had grabbed the rifles and they were running across the field towards us. So I took my wife and we ran and we ran and we ran and we didn't stop until we were in the forest. Only then did I turn around to see. They had taken the body of my father, tied ropes around his legs, and were dragging him through the field behind the forest, behind the horse. They had taken their torches, and the house was burning to the ground. We crawled through the ditches. We slept under bridges. We bribed every guard that we could to get on the trains, to get on the ships, to get here. Because there was no other time. So you see, sometimes you have no choice. And with that, he left me and went to the hospital to be with his wife. Shortly after that, my wife came back from the hospital and she said that the guards were coming and the doctors were coming to check those that had been marked before. So the doctor looked at my rash. And he took a washcloth and dipped it in some water and wiped the rash away. It had been dirt. I had been on board a ship for so long, I hadn't been able to clear properly. So with that same rag, he wiped away the mark from off my coat. Then the guards started to call the names. Vito and his family made it to California, America. Rosa Malazzo had to wait on the island because nobody came to claim her, and she was single and could not go in by herself. Jacob and Rebecca Janowski. They had a baby boy. And it was born on the island, so it was in America. And I hear that when they were healthy, they all went in together. And finally, the guard called Wilhelm Brenner, Martin Brenner, Anna, and Henrik. And we took the cards. We took the cards and we went through the door that said push to New York City. Now, all that happened many, many years ago. We did make it to Sheboygan, where I opened up a small print shop. And after many years, I decided it was time to retire. I wanted to give it to my son, and he wanted to go play baseball in Cleveland. And my daughter had gone up to Denver, Colorado to be a writer. So I sold it to my apprentice. And I went home to be with Martha and have time to look through the boxes in the attic and come across these old memories. And I would like to thank you very much for letting me share these memories with you today. Thank you.